They realized something was wrong the moment every alien officer in the observation deck froze mid-breath, because the human wasn't even trying yet. Commander Lurith of the Vexen Dominion, a species known across the Spiral Arms for their calm military discipline, felt his throat click shut as the holoscreens lit up with alerts. Every simulation, every projection, every probability metric was spiraling into the red. The humans weren't accelerating, weren't activating their high-tier weapons, weren't deploying their upgraded fighters. In fact, the human captain seemed to be stretching. Not metaphorically. Actually stretching. Captain Rhea Morgan rolled her shoulders like she'd just woken up from a nap in her ship's command chair. Her crew casually rotated their wrists, cracked their knuckles, and zoomed in on the largest concentration of enemy dreadnoughts, as if browsing a menu at a cozy cafe. Across the galaxy, transmitters chirped with panic. Luritha's eyes flicked back and forth between Rhea's feed and the Dominion's command console. "Is this normal human behavior?" he whispered. "Yes," answered Ensign Valrii, who had spent a full year studying humanity's battle archives. "But I don't think they're taking this battle seriously. That may be catastrophic." "Catastrophic for them or catastrophic for us?" Lurith asked, though he already suspected the answer. Valrii swallowed. "Commander, I once saw a human captain take down a cruiser while eating noodles." That didn't help his nerves. The unusual situation had started only an hour ago, when the Galactic Concord had urgently summoned humanity to aid in a dispute with the colossal Ythron coalition. The Ythron were known as the Ship Eaters. They deployed biomechanical leviathans capable of absorbing hulls, data, and even entire weapon systems. They devoured war fleets. They overwhelmed star clusters. They were a nightmare made of tendrils, teeth, and the worst possible design choices. Naturally, the humans showed up late. And naturally, they docked while blasting music loud enough for 3 entire species to cover their auditory canals. Rhea had stepped off the transport ramp wearing a leather jacket, sunglasses, and a smirk so slow and confident it nearly caused a diplomatic incident all on its own. Lurith remembered thinking, either we are saved, or doomed. He was still unsure which. The funny part? The humans had been called not to fight, but to negotiate. The mere idea made Luritha's mandibles twitch. Sending humans to negotiate with an apex-tier predatory species was like sending plasma fuel to calm down a wildfire. But the Concord insisted, humans adapt. Humans survive. Humans talk their way out of anything. What they didn't mention was that humans also had a talent for getting bored during diplomacy. That's exactly what happened. The negotiation holotable had barely activated when the Ythron representative, an 8-story tangle of biomechanical vines, let out a roar meant to intimidate everyone in the chamber. Most diplomats flinched, a few fainted, and one tried to escape through a ventilation duct. "Rhea?" She took a sip of her iced coffee and said, "Cute roar. You got a bigger one?" Lurith nearly fainted himself. The Ythron Leviathan screeched louder, so loud it rattled the windows of the station. Rhea shrugged again. "Still kinda mid." The Leviathan tried threatening them with consumption, assimilation, planetary erasure. Rhea's only reply was, "Look, buddy, I love trash talk, but if we're gonna do this, can we at least speed it up?" And then she leaned back, took off her sunglasses, and smiled the smile that humans reserve exclusively for sports, danger, and situations that should absolutely not excite them. That was when the Ythron launched a preemptive invasion fleet. The galaxy panicked. And the humans? They just stretched. Now Rhea's ship, the HSS Sunvale, floated calmly at the edge of the battlefield. Thousands of Ythron dreadnoughts warped in, filling the starfield with ominous glowing tendrils. Each one humming with absorbed technology stolen from a dozen species. Rhea tapped her console lazily. "All right, people. Let's see what they've got." Her crew responded with a chorus of, "Aye, Captain," sounding more like they were preparing for a competitive board game than a multi-system war. Lurith gestured at the main holoscreen. "Captain Morgan, the Ythron's lead Leviathan is preparing a supermassive energy siphon that could eat my ship?" "Yeah, I figured." Rhea grinned. Kind of adorable they think they can. Lurith felt his 3 hearts sink. Captain, this is the galaxy's most feared apex fleet. Right. They have devoured whole civilizations. Right. They consider humans an appetizer. Rhea cracked her neck. Well, I hope they like spicy food. Her crew laughed. Lurith didn't. The stakes were no longer just high, they were astronomical. If the humans failed, the Ythron would steamroll the Concorde's core systems. Billions would vanish. Every species present knew they were living on borrowed time. And yet the humans were holding back. Rhea hadn't activated the Sunvale's quantum lances, hadn't deployed the zero-point strike wings, hadn't called in their silent auxiliary fleets. She didn't even switch off her ships, casual mode, a configuration meant for long travel and low power consumption. The Ythron Leviathan roared again, this time amplifying its sonic shockwaves with gravitational pulses. Fractures spread across the Starfield V-port. Even the station trembled, groaning under the pressure. Rhea blinked slowly. Okay. That's mildly impressive. Mildly. Lurith looked ready to combust. Captain, why aren't you using your full arsenal? Rhea squinted at the enemy fleet, unimpressed. Because they haven't given me a reason yet. Then she leaned back, propping her boots casually on the console, and added. But they will. Lurith felt a cold, chilling realization slide through him. Humans weren't fighting. Humans weren't trying. Humans weren't even warming up. And if this was what the Ythron were facing while humans were still holding back, then the galaxy was about to witness something terrifying. Something historic. And something no one, not even the boldest species, was prepared for. You could tell the Ythron realized something was wrong when their entire frontline stopped advancing, not because they feared the humans, but because the humans still hadn't bothered to stand up. The galaxy watched in frozen disbelief as Captain Rhea Morgan continued lounging in her command chair with the relaxed posture of someone mentally deciding between 2 breakfast options. This was the kind of behavior normally reserved for heroes in ancient stories, for people so frighteningly skilled they didn't need to posture. It was also deeply, deeply horrifying. The Ythron's tactical hive node pulsed with frustration, its biocircuitry rippling as it increased pressure. Dozens of tendril-wrapped dreadnoughts reformed into a spearhead formation. Their hulls glowed reddish-purple, distorting the surrounding vacuum. Fragments of swallowed starships shimmered inside their armor, remnants of past victims repurposed into weapons. Ensign Belrii trembled as the holomap bloomed with new threat icons. Commander, their Leviathan-class warship is activating a gravitational siphon. Its pull will rip apart the Sunvale's hull plating. Lurith felt sweat accumulate along his carapace. Captain Morgan, I strongly suggest evasive action. Rhea didn't move. Nah. Let them cook. The humans on her bridge chuckled, and one casually adjusted the ship's playlist like this was a night drive and not a galactic war. Rhea glanced at her tactical officer, a skinny red-headed ensign named Milo. Milo, how strong is that siphon? Milo squinted at the readings. Strong enough to cause discomfort. Maybe shake loose some coffee mugs. Rhea sipped her drink. Well, that's rude. I like those mugs. The Ythron fleet unleashed the gravitational beam. The stars warped. Space bent like a sheet of metal under molten pressure. Waves of gravity slammed into the Sunvale, and Lurith braced himself against a railing as alarms screamed across the observation deck. The Sunvale did not budge. Its hull shimmered faintly, absorbing the impact like a warm breeze. The ship didn't shudder. Didn't groan. Didn't even rattle. It was as if the Ythron had tried to pull a mountain across the ground by flicking it with a finger. Belrii stared at the sensors with wide, horrified eyes. Commander, their siphon is destabilizing from internal backlash. What? It's pulling so hard, Belrii whispered, that it's tearing itself apart. The Ythron flagship convulsed, writhing as its tendrils snapped under the force of its own gravitational overreach. Panic pulses rippled across the enemy armada. Rhea finally swung her legs off her console, planting her boots on the floor. All right, that was cute. My turn. The galaxy felt a collective shiver. She stood now, finally, and her crew straightened instinctively. They'd seen their captain go from calm to activated before. Entire systems had changed ownership because of that switch. Rhea cracked her knuckles. Let's see, what's the least overkill option? She tapped her chin while the largest predator fleet in known history screamed in panic. Milo coughed. Captain? Maybe use the kinetic tiles? Rhea raised an eyebrow. Kinetic tiles? Against them? Milo, I'm not trying to bully them. But they're Ythron. Even bullies deserve fair warning. Lurith nearly choked. Fair warning? Rhea grinned and opened a comm channel. A hologram of the Ythron Leviathan flickered into existence. It screamed at her, spewing threats of consumption and annihilation. Biobone plates rattled as it extended its tendrils. Rhea took a long sip of her drink and flicked the mute button. The Leviathan's image continued roaring in silence. Okay, she said cheerfully. So here's your warning. And I want you to appreciate deeply how polite this is. She leaned forward, eyes sharp. I'm going to breathe on you. Luritha's heart slammed against his ribs. What does that? But the captain didn't answer. She simply nodded at Milo. Milo adjusted the ship's energy focus to 0.01% of its venting output. The Sunvale's front vents opened. A puff of compressed air, barely warm, barely visible, drifted across the void. A breath. It traveled lazily toward the Ythron formation, gentle and harmless seeming. Then it hit. Shockwaves erupted through the Ythron fleet like a god had sneezed. Entire dreadnoughts spun violently, colliding into each other. Tendrils snapped like scorched wires. The Leviathan-class flagship was hurled backward nearly 100 kilometers, its armor peeling away in spirals. Lurith nearly dropped to his knees. That was 0.01%. Rhea shrugged. I told you. Just warming up. Velrei stared at her with awe and fear. Captain Morgan, if we escalate further, we may rupture space-time in this region. Oh, relax, Rhea said. We're nowhere near that level. Then she looked at the tactical display and frowned. But they're not running yet, huh? Indeed, the Ythron had regrouped. Their hive node pulsed with fury, and reinforcements warped in, hundreds more. The starfield darkened with chitinous hulls and bioweapon tendrils. They swarmed like a living storm. Rhea sighed. All right. Time to get a little creative. She tapped her wrist hollow. Sunvale, prep the mirror field. Set it to random. Milo's jaw dropped. Random? Captain, that'll. Yes, she said simply. Lurith gripped the railing hard. What is a mirror field? Rhea winked. You'll see. The Sunvale lit up with a cascade of golden hexagonal panels forming around the ship like blooming metallic petals. Each panel shimmered with shifting patterns, unpredictable, chaotic, improvisational. Human-style engineering at its finest. Rhea crossed her arms. Let's see how they handle a little human creativity. The Ythron charged. The Sunvale waited. And the mirror field began to hum. The Ythron realized too late that they weren't charging a ship, they were charging a question. Every tendril, every bioweapon, every living hull that hurled itself forward suddenly had to confront the unpredictable chaos of human technology, something no species had ever fully understood or predicted. When the mirror field activated with a shimmering pulse, the starfield itself seemed to tilt sideways, and even Lurith felt his stomach twist as the boundaries of space blurred like a reflection on rippling water. The first Ythron dreadnought struck the mirror field. It didn't explode. It didn't bounce. It simply vanished. Lurith let out a horrified squeak. Where did it go? Rhea raised one finger. Wait for it. A second later, the dreadnought appeared, not in front of the Sunvale, but behind the Ythron fleet, materializing at high velocity and slamming into three of its own allies like a cosmic bowling ball. The resulting chain collision rippled outward, shattering dozens of biohulls. Velrei gripped the console. Captain, that is impossible. Rhea winked. Nah. Just improbable. The mirror field shimmered again. The second wave of Ythron ships hit the barrier, and each one blinked out in a different direction, some sideways into empty void, some downward toward the gravitational well of a nearby moon, and one unfortunate dreadnought reappeared at a 180-degree rotation and immediately folded in on itself. The galaxy watching the broadcast whispered collectively, "Humans play with physics. The Ythron only use it." But the Ythron hive mind had no intention of backing down. Their Leviathan flagship screeched, its biomechanical plates rearranging into a spear form. The creature extended a cluster of hyperdense spines that glowed with absorbed energy from a dozen conquered species. Lurith gasped as the reading spiked. "Captain Morgan, that thing is preparing a collapsing singularity thrust." Rhea smirked. "Cute. They're trying to make a black hole." Velrii stared at her. "See, Captain, that maneuver can erase moons." "Velrii," Rhea said gently, "I've erased worse by accident." And then the Leviathan attacked. The universe bent around the Ythron spear form as it shot forward, dragging a howling vortex of dark energy behind it. The mirror field panels spun chaotically, rearranging themselves into new defensive patterns faster than the eye could follow. But even the mirror field had limits. The spear struck. The impact was cataclysmic, an eruption of light and gravitational distortion so fierce that the surrounding asteroids shattered into dust. Alarms blared. The mirror field cracked, ripples spreading across its surface like shockwaves through water. The Sunvale rocked. For the first time, the humans braced themselves. Lurith clung to a railing, his heart hammering. "It's breaking! Captain, the mirror field is failing!" But Rhea just grinned, eyes gleaming with the spark that terrified empires. "Good!" Velrii cried out. "Good? If they broke it," Rhea said, "that means they can handle the next part." She snapped her fingers. "Sunvale, activate Phase 2. The mirror field shattered into glittering fragments that didn't fall, but hovered, orbiting the Sunvale in a perfectly choreographed spiral. Every shard reflected twisted versions of the surrounding battlefield, mirrored Ythron dreadnoughts, mirrored explosions, mirrored stars. Then the shards pulsed. Where there had been one Sunvale, there were now hundreds. Each reflection identical. Each one moving independently. Each one radiating the same energy signature. Lurith's mandibles dropped. A fractal fleet?" Rhea corrected him. "A jazz fleet. Every reflection improvises." Velrii's jaw trembled. "Captain, even the human's own fleet won't be able to tell which one is real." "That's the point," Rhea said. "Not even I know which one is real," Lurith screeched. "Why?" Rhea's smile turned feral. "Because if the enemy doesn't know who to hit, they hit everyone. And everyone hits back." The fractal fleet surged forward. Every reflected Sunvale fired at once, some with lasers, some with kinetic rounds, some with beams Rhea had never actually installed on her real ship but had somehow manifested through the mirror field's chaotic logic. The battlefield erupted into a storm of impossible energy patterns, glittering like starlight whipped into a frenzy. The Ythron screamed. The hive mind faltered. Their spearform collapsed, tendrils writhing as the fractal fleet tore through their lines with improvisational madness. The Ythron were built to fight predictable foes, armies, fleets, disciplined formations. They were not built to fight jazz. Not built to fight chaos. Not built to fight humans being creative. The enemy fleets broke apart, retreating, reforming, retreating again. But the fractal Sunvales simply adapted, changing firing patterns, shifting formations without rhyme or reason. Some flew backward. Some barrel-rolled in spirals that defied aerodynamics. One simply drifted lazily with its lights set to strobe, confusing half the Ythron fleet so badly they crashed into an asteroid. Even Lurith was struggling to breathe as he watched the impossible display. They can't win. The Ythron can't win. Rhea stretched. They're stubborn. They'll try something stupid soon. As if responding to her words, the Leviathan flagship roared again. Its tendrils retracted, its plates folded inward, and its core began to glow with a terrifying, apocalyptic light. Velrii gasped. Commander, that's a collapse core ignition. If it detonates, it'll take out this entire system. Lurith finished in horror. The Leviathan's body grew brighter. Its screech became deeper. It was sacrificing itself to annihilate everyone. Rhea's expression sharpened. All right, she said. Enough warm up. She stepped forward, her crew standing at attention. Sunvale, prep the final option. Lurith steadied himself. What final option? Rhea cracked her knuckles again. The one we never use. The battlefield stilled. The fractal fleet froze. The galaxy held its breath. And the Sunvale began to glow. You could feel the universe tighten, like reality itself was holding on to the railing as the Sunvale brightened, not with weapon energy, not with gravitational distortion, but with something older, stranger, and infinitely more human. The Ythron core was seconds away from collapsing into a star-killing singularity, yet every eye across the galaxy was glued to the tiny Terran warship that suddenly looked less like a vessel and more like a myth remembering its true name. Luritha's mandibles quivered. Captain, what is this? Rhea breathed out softly. The Dawn Protocol. Velrii nearly fainted. That's not real. That's a legend humans tell cadets to scare them into not touching the reactor. Rhea winked. Most legends start from someone doing something dumb and surviving. The Sunvale pulsed. The fractal reflections flickered, then realigned, orbiting the ship in a perfect spiral, like planets drawn to a sun. For a moment, the battlefield looked eerily peaceful. Even the Ythron flagship hesitated, its collapsing core dimming for the briefest instant, as if some primal instinct warned it. Do not approach the human light. But the hive mind had already committed. Tendrils spread wide. Its core brightened again. Lurith shouted, Captain, it's going to detonate. Rhea simply raised her voice. Crew, brace. Then the Sunvale sang. It wasn't sound, not really. It was resonance. Every fractal reflection hummed with a tone that vibrated the bones, the hulls, the stars. Space rippled in concentric waves as the ship's reactor released a carefully contained burst of hyperliminal harmonics. The Dawn Protocol. Forbidden. Unstable. Beautiful. The harmonics reached the Ythron core, and for the first time in documented history, a collapsed core hesitated. The swirling mass of dark energy twitched, its rotational momentum stuttering. The Leviathan screeched as if something had seized its heart. Velrii watched in disbelief. Captain, you're rewriting its collapse frequency. Not rewriting, Rhea murmured. Retuning. The harmonics intensified. The Ythron core's glow flickered from violent blue to soft gold, its destructive oscillations slowing, stabilizing. The Leviathan thrashed, tendrils lashing wildly in panic. It wanted to explode. The hive mind wanted annihilation. But the core itself obeyed the music. Lurith whispered, You're calming a singularity. Rhea didn't deny it. She lifted one hand, and the fractal fleet mirrored the gesture, hundreds of sunvales echoing her movements. Their harmonics aligned into a rising crescendo. The glow of the Dawn Protocol spread outward, surrounding the enemy flagship in a shimmering cocoon of refracted light. The Ythron shrieked one last time. Then, silence. The collapsed core extinguished. The Leviathan froze, its terror echoing across the hive mind as its ultimate weapon was neutralized by a ship the size of a cruiser and a captain with more recklessness than mercy. Rhea exhaled. Phase 3. Now. Milo hit a single command. The fractal reflections collapsed inward, spiraling like shards of light returning home until the Sunvale stood alone again. The returning harmonics funneled straight into the Ythron flagship. And the flagship shattered. Not violently, not with fire or explosions or triumphant booms. It simply cracked like old pottery touched by a feather, breaking into 1,000 glittering fragments that drifted apart harmlessly. No shockwave. No system-ending blast. Just quiet. Gentle. Final. The remaining Ythron ships immediately stopped. Their tendrils curled inward. Their engines dimmed. The hive mind collapsed into disarray, sections of the fleet breaking into uncontrolled spirals before stabilizing in passive retreat. A few ships broadcast surrender signals. Rhea collapsed into her chair, shaking. "Captain Morgan, we won!" Lurith couldn't speak at first. His throat locked, overwhelmed by what he'd witnessed. "Humans," he finally said, voice trembling. "We're still holding back. Even now, this wasn't your full strength." Rhea shrugged lightly. "Oh, this? No. This was a gesture." The galaxy felt that sentence like a cold wind across a battlefield. A gesture. The Sunvale had just dismantled the strongest weapon of a species feared for millions of years, using only creativity, improvisation, and an ancient protocol born from experimental human engineering. Rhea swallowed hard. "Captain, what would have happened if you had used the full Dawn protocol?" Rhea shook her head. "We don't use it. Ever. The universe isn't ready. We're not ready." Lurith stared at her in newfound awe. "If this was restraint, why did you finally act?" Rhea's expression softened, almost gentle. "Because someone had to show them there's another way to fight. A way that doesn't end with extermination." Silence settled over the bridge. Outside, the remaining Ythron ships slowly opened channels. Fear pulsed in their signals, but also confusion. Uncertainty. Something the hive mind had not felt in eons. Possibility. Rhea stepped forward, broadcasting across all open frequencies. "This battle is over. Return to your worlds. Rebuild. Grow. But hear this clearly, humanity never wanted this war. If you come for us again, you won't face our warm-up. You'll face our truth." The entire galaxy listened. "We don't fight to dominate. We fight to live. And we fight well." Lurith felt something inside him shift, a mixture of pride, terror, and hope. The Sunvale turned slowly, engines brightening as it set course back toward Terran space. Rhea eased into her chair. "Someone bring me another coffee," she said, exhausted. As the ship drifted away, the galaxy whispered. They weren't using their strongest. What happens when they do? And somewhere far behind them, the first Ythron ships began transmitting a message the galaxy never expected, requesting peaceful dialogue with humanity. The war ended that day. But the legend? It had just begun.